Hey guys, welcome back to the Anti-Guru. My name's John, I'm a town planner. Some of you might know me. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Hello, lovely to see you. We've got something like 577 subscribers now. People who enjoy my weekly rants on planning law and practice. So thank you very much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Today's little rant, as it were, is entitled "The Planners Are All on E." And what we're talking about is the effect of the change to the use classes order, the effect of the change amalgamating A1, A2, A3, B1, A, B, and C, and some of the Ds into class E, what it can do to a town centre. Now, I think it's a very interesting subject. I'm sure you will too. It's very poignant that I'm recording it today. Today is the 14th of October. Now, today is the first day of the judicial review into these changes brought by Rights Community Action and against the Ministry for Homes, Communities and Local Government. Rights Community Action's case is that the provisions are unfair, that they didn't follow the correct procedure. And obviously the case for the government is that they are fair and they did follow the correct procedure. They were consulted upon many times. We're going to have a quick chat about Class E, what it does, what it can do, how it can affect you in the next couple of minutes. Join me after the intros and we'll get going. Welcome to the Anti-Guru. Okay, so the planners are all on E. What a title, the planners are all on E. A few years ago when I started being an educator, I used to accuse town planners of the 60s of all being on LSD. And I think we're basically just going to a different drug. Now, our drug of choice is legislation. And the drug of choice today is the use classes order, because Class E, I've done some ranting about Class E recently, and I wanted to sort of summarize my rants in an anti-guru, just to give you an idea of where it's all going. Class E comes about because of basically the death of the high street. Now, we knew this was coming, and we knew this was coming in a number of different ways. We knew it was coming because it's been consulted on before, because the government have been building us up to this. The government never do things at speed. It's always built up and built up and built up and built up over time. So the government have been building us up to this change. They've been working at us to get us there, right? And they've been very slowly and very subtly giving us new permitted development rights to afford us the freedoms that we now have under Class E. Let me explain. A little while ago, we got a new permitted development right. We actually got two. We got a permitted development right that allowed us to go up the scale in Class A. So we always had Class A Part 3 Schedule 2, which allowed us to go down the scale, A3 to A2 to A1. Without planning permission, get on with it. Not a problem at all. We then got another class, which allowed us to go from A1, A2 to A3, subject to some limits, subject to some criteria, but allowed us to go up the scale into restaurant or cafe. And the idea behind that was to give property owners the ability to flex use into a use that could work inside a town centre. The idea behind that was to break a piece of control that had always been applied by planning authorities. A piece of control being the control on uses in the high street, right? Control on uses in the high street. Portsmouth City Centre, Gosport Town Centre, just over there, both have roughly the same policy. And what it says is no less than 75% of the properties on this road shall be in A1 or A2. That's what the policy says. The problem is, when A1 and A2 is on its backside, what happens to that policy? The policy has no flex in it. It's got no ability to be varied. So the government has to step in. The government has to step in to provide a way out of the policy, and that's a permitted development right. The government also introduced last year Philip Hammond's attempt at altering the planning system, Class J of Part 3 of Schedule 2. Now, Class J was very interesting, because what it tried to do was give a prior approval for the conversion of a shop into an office. Shop into office in the high street. The purpose of this was to try and save the high street. The purpose of it was to try and get the high street to function more akin to roads and streets in London, where you do find offices interspersed with other things up and down the high street. Interesting, eh? So the government have been building us up, and building us up and building us up and building us up and building us up. And then famously, in August, the government said, aha, we've had a consultation. And they had absolutely had a consultation on this. They'd actually had a couple. And they said, aha, right, so we've been building you up, and now what we're going to do is we're going to press the nuclear button. And by pressing the nuclear button, what we're going to do is we're going to amalgamate use classes. Now, this is not the first time they've amalgamated use classes. Ladies and gentlemen, dear viewer, Class B uses, B1 through B8, used to have B3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 in it, up until the early 80s. I think it was the early 80s. And then they got amalgamated, and some of the uses got dumped into sui generis, and it left us with B1, B2, and B8. Right. Interesting. So this is not the first time the government amalgamated. Now, what they have done is one of the biggest amalgamations that has ever happened. It's one of the biggest collapses of use classes, individual use classes, that has ever occurred in reality, because what they're trying to do is preserve our commercial sector. And let me explain why. There's a long standing piece of geographical thought. This is going all the way back to when I did GCSE geography, and it's still taught in GCSE geography today, about vacancy rates. Vacancy in a town centre is rot. Vacancy in a town centre is rot. The more vacancy you get, the worse the rot gets. And then you start to affect anchors. Now, anchor stores are your big chains. They're typically in the middle or at the wings. They're never sort of off in the vagaties, in the grey area between them, right? So you typically find a big New Look or a big Morrison's or an Iceland as an anchor store inside a town centre. When you start to lose your anchors, you start to lose the town centre, and you start to lose the anchors by rot, by vacancy rate, by low order shopping being allowed into the town centre. By low order shopping, what I mean is things like charity shops, which don't reinvest back into the unit itself. Things like vape shops, things like bookies. Bookies were always seen as low order. They actually got dumped out of retail and into sui generis. So reality is that these rights, Class E, is designed to stop the rot by giving property owners the ability to go and find a new user, by giving a more flexible use to a commercial business or service unit. right? And I think that's quite critical. I think E is quite exciting. I think E has the opportunity to open up our towns and open up our cities and open up our struggling commercial cores, and to actually say, you know what, we don't have to wait for the planners to make a decision that they should be making anyway. We can just do it. We can just flip the switch, say, right, off we go. Here is where we're at. Now, I've been giving advice on Class E. I think it's great. And I've been giving advice on Class E to enable people to free up property. So where you have a property that was previously a protected community use, like a creche is now Class E, can flex out of that and become something less protected. I think that's a great starting point to help property move forward. I'm all about E. I love it. I think Class E is actually one of the greatest alterations to the use classes order we've ever had. And it's probably one of the more pragmatic alterations because it allows them to do what they want to do next. Boris Johnson said they want to encourage a greater number of properties to be converted to residential through permitted development rights. How do you do that, ladies and gentlemen? Very, very simply, by giving a prior approval right to Class E uses, the new class. And the beauty is we know the government are going to do it because they've given us a date by which they're going to do it, the 31st of July, 2021. I want to hear your thoughts on this. I want to see how people are using Class E. I know how we're consulting on it. I think it's very exciting. I want to hear from you. So like, comment, subscribe, of course. Catch me on the next Anti-Guru, where we're going to be doing a bit more work on Class C3C, Class C3B. We've had some questions, some audience interaction. Love a bit of audience interaction. So let's see where this goes. Have a great day. I'll catch you on the next Anti-Guru.